The sun was shining softly over the marble stones as a warm breeze passed through the rows of visitors standing in respectful silence. It was a bright, beautiful day at Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, one of the most honored and respected places in the country. People from different states, even different countries, had gathered to witness the ceremony. Many of them had quiet, thoughtful expressions. Some were holding small flags. Some simply stood still, their hands behind their backs, watching the guard's slow, perfect steps. The guard was dressed in a clean, formal uniform. Every single movement he made was sharp, strong, and full of meaning. His shoes made a clear click sound on the stone with each step. His face was calm, serious, and focused. He wasn't just walking. He was performing a duty that had been done by many brave people before him. His job was to guard the tomb and make sure that the place remained a symbol of honor and respect. In the middle of the crowd, a group of tourists stood near the rope that separated the audience from the ceremonial path. Among them was a boy about 15 years old. He wore bright sneakers, a cap turned backward, and had a small speaker in his hand. His name was Ryan. He wasn't like most of the other visitors. While the people around him looked serious and respectful, Ryan looked bored. He kept tapping his shoes, looking at his phone, and sighing loudly to his parents. Mr. and Mrs. Johnson were standing next to him. They were excited to be here. They had planned this trip for weeks because they wanted their son to learn about history and respect. But Ryan wasn't paying attention. "Ryan, watch carefully," his father whispered. "This is important." Ryan shrugged. "It's just a guy walking back and forth," he said under his breath, rolling his eyes. His mother gave him a soft nudge. "Show some respect," she whispered, hoping the guard wouldn't notice. But Ryan didn't really understand why this moment mattered so much. He had grown up watching funny videos and quick clips on his phone. He wasn't used to quiet, serious moments like this. To him, it felt like standing in line for too long, boring and pointless. The crowd was silent, and the only sound was the guard's steps echoing across the open space. Suddenly, Ryan whispered something funny to himself and laughed quietly. A couple standing nearby gave him a quick look, clearly not happy. Ryan noticed but didn't care much. He found it strange that everyone was acting like a statue. "Why is everyone so serious?" he whispered again. His father leaned down and whispered, "Because this is a place of respect. Brave people gave their lives, and this guard is here to honor them." But Ryan wasn't listening carefully. He was distracted by the way the guard turned and marched with perfect timing. It looked almost like a scene from a movie. He nudged his friend, who was standing beside him, and whispered, "Look at that. He's like a robot." His friend chuckled, but it was a quiet, nervous laugh. Then Ryan took a small step forward and raised his hands, copying the guard's movements. He exaggerated the steps, swinging his arms in a silly way. His friend shook his head and whispered, "Dude, stop." But Ryan didn't stop. He thought it was just a joke, just a bit of fun. He didn't realize that what he was doing was disrespectful. A woman standing behind them saw what he was doing and frowned deeply. She leaned toward him and said softly but firmly, "Young man, this is not the place to play around." Her words were calm, but serious. Ryan gave a quick half smile and turned away. Then, as the guard clicked his boots against the stone again, Ryan mimicked the sound with his sneakers, stamping the ground twice. A few heads in the crowd turned toward him. His mother grabbed his wrist gently, whispering, "Ryan, stop it right now. This is not funny." The mood of the crowd started to change slightly. What had been a peaceful and silent atmosphere now carried a quiet tension. Ryan didn't fully understand the weight of his actions. To him, he was just being silly, like he always was when he got bored. But to everyone else, it felt deeply wrong. The guard continued his march, straight and disciplined, just like he had done hundreds of times before. But Ryan's laughter, though quiet at first, began to echo faintly across the open space. It didn't match the moment. It felt out of place, like a phone ringing during a moment of silence. An older man, wearing a veteran's cap, turned slowly to look at Ryan. His face wasn't angry. It was disappointed. His eyes carried memories that Ryan couldn't even imagine. He had come to this place not for entertainment but to honor friends and brothers who never came home. He didn't say anything, but his look alone spoke louder than words. Ryan noticed the man's expression for a brief second but looked away quickly, pretending not to care. Then, the guard reached the center of the ceremonial path and stopped. The crowd grew even quieter, as if the wind itself paused to listen. Ryan leaned slightly forward, still smiling. He didn't know that in just a few seconds, everything would change. The guard turned sharply, facing the crowd. His posture was tall and firm, his eyes fixed straight ahead. Then he lifted his right foot and brought it down with a powerful, clear click. The sound echoed across the space, louder than before. Ryan's smile started to fade just a little. The guard's head turned slightly, and for the first time, Ryan felt like the soldier was looking directly at him. His chest tightened. It wasn't the kind of stare that was angry or harsh. It was strong, steady, and full of silent meaning. It was the kind of look that said, "This is not a place for games." Ryan took a tiny step back, his shoes making a soft squeak on the stone floor. His parents exchanged worried glances. His father's jaw tightened. His mother gave him another nudge, whispering, "Enough." But Ryan's earlier actions had already drawn attention. A soft whisper spread through the crowd. People didn't speak loudly, but their faces showed disapproval. A woman holding a small flag lowered it slowly and shook her head. A man in a suit folded his arms. The teenage boy who thought this moment was just another boring stop on their trip was now standing in the center of unwanted attention. The guard's footsteps resumed, calm, sharp, and precise, but something had changed. There was more weight behind each movement, more intensity. It wasn't because he was angry. It was because his duty was sacred. He was protecting something far bigger than himself. And for the first time that day, Ryan began to feel it. His laughter had stopped completely. He could still hear his heartbeat in his chest. The space felt bigger, heavier, quieter. He swallowed nervously and put his hands in his pockets, pretending everything was fine, but inside, he felt a strange mix of embarrassment and confusion. His father bent down slightly and whispered again, "Son, this isn't a game. Do you know why we're here?" Ryan didn't answer. His father continued, "This place is about people who gave everything they had for their country. This guard doesn't stand here for fun. He's honoring them. Every step he takes means something." Ryan looked down at the ground. He hadn't thought about it like that. He had never really felt the weight of history before. He was used to being the funny one, the one who made people laugh when things got too quiet. But here, laughter didn't belong. Here, every sound, every breath, felt like part of something important. The guard turned again, facing the direction where Ryan stood. The sound of his boots was crisp and strong. Ryan felt as if all the air around him had slowed down. His friend, who had laughed quietly earlier, now stood completely still. The crowd had their eyes on the soldier again, but Ryan knew a few were still looking at him too. The wind picked up slightly, brushing through the trees nearby. The flags fluttered gently, making a soft rustling sound. Ryan suddenly became aware of everything: the steps, the flags, the quiet faces around him, and the deep, respectful silence of the place. It wasn't just another tourist stop. It was a living reminder of people who had sacrificed everything. A small girl, maybe 7 or 8 years old, stood a few steps away holding her father's hand. She was silent, her eyes wide with curiosity and respect. Ryan noticed her looking at the guard, not with laughter or boredom, but with wonder. She seemed to understand something that he had missed. That moment struck him in a quiet way. It made him feel small, not because anyone had shouted at him, but because the silence itself had spoken louder than any voice. The guard came to a stop again, his posture straight as a line. Ryan could see the sunlight reflecting off the polished parts of his uniform. It was clear that this man wasn't just standing there. He was representing something bigger than himself, something strong, something honorable. Ryan shifted his feet slightly, feeling the rough stone beneath his sneakers. He wished he could rewind the last few minutes and undo what he had done. But time doesn't move backward. The people around him had seen his behavior, and more importantly, He had seen the difference between his attitude and theirs. His mother placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. She didn't need to say anything. Her touch alone was enough to tell him that what he had done was wrong. Not in a loud, punishing way, but in a quiet, disappointing way that hurt more. For a few more moments, the ceremony continued as it always did, with precision, respect, and silence. But for Ryan, everything felt different now. His heart was still beating fast, his throat was dry, and a strange kind of realization was starting to build inside him. He was no longer the boy making jokes in a crowd. He was someone who had crossed a line he didn't even know existed, and now he could feel its weight. The air around the tomb was still. The guard stood tall, perfectly still, his posture straight as if carved out of stone. Every eye in the crowd was on him. Ryan felt like time had slowed down. He could hear the faint sound of leaves rustling in the wind, the soft breathing of people around him, and somewhere in the distance, the hum of a car passing far beyond the memorial grounds. Ryan's heart beat a little faster now, not from excitement, but from something heavier, something he couldn't quite name yet. A few minutes ago, he had been laughing. Now, he felt a strange kind of pressure building in his chest. It wasn't because someone had shouted at him. It was because of the weight of the silence itself. This wasn't a regular place. This wasn't just a spot for tourists. This was a place where silence had meaning. The guard suddenly moved. The click of his polished boots echoed like a drumbeat through the space. He took a few steps forward with the same sharpness and control as before, then stopped again. His head turned slightly, and this time, his voice filled the entire area. It wasn't loud in a hurtful way, but it was strong, clear, and full of authority. "It is requested that everyone maintain silence and respect," he said. Those words felt bigger than the air itself. They didn't just float through the crowd. They settled on every single person like a soft but firm reminder. Ryan felt those words more than he heard them. It was as if the message wasn't just for him, but at that moment, it felt like it was. His stomach tightened, and his cheeks grew warm. His mother's hand gently squeezed his shoulder, but she didn't say anything. She didn't need to. Ryan already understood. He didn't want to look around, but he could feel the presence of all the people who had witnessed his earlier behavior. They weren't glaring at him with anger. They were simply quiet, and somehow that quiet felt louder than any scolding could. The guard's eyes didn't linger on Ryan for long. He turned back to face the tomb and resumed his slow, meaningful steps. Each movement was like a line in a silent story. A story Ryan hadn't cared to listen to before, but was now hearing clearly. Ryan shifted his feet nervously. The laughter that had once bubbled inside him was gone completely. All that was left was the echo of the guard's calm but powerful voice. It wasn't a long sentence, but it carried a weight Ryan had never experienced before. The ceremony continued, but for Ryan, everything felt different now. He was no longer just watching a guard walk back and forth. He was seeing someone carry out a duty with more respect, discipline, and pride than he had ever shown for anything. He realized that this wasn't about putting on a show. This was about remembering people who had given their lives for others. This was about something bigger than himself. The crowd had returned to silence. But Ryan's thoughts were louder than ever. Why did I act like that? He thought, why didn't I just stand quietly like everyone else? A little while ago, he thought it was funny to mock the steps. Now, it didn't seem funny at all. It seemed childish. It seemed wrong. His father leaned slightly toward him and whispered softly, "Do you understand now?" Ryan didn't answer at first. He just nodded slowly. He felt a tightness in his throat, the kind that comes when you know you've done something that can't be undone. No one had punished him. No one had forced him to apologize. But something inside him had changed. He lifted his eyes to watch the guard again. The sun hit the guard's uniform in a way that made it almost shine. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't frowning. He was just standing there, focused. Ryan suddenly realized how much strength it must take to stand so perfectly still, day after day, in front of people from all over the world, people who sometimes understood and sometimes didn't. The guard did his duty with dignity no matter what. Ryan's friend, who had been beside him the whole time, whispered, "Hey, Are you okay? Ryan gave a small nod. Yeah, he whispered back. I just didn't get it before. His friend stayed quiet after that. For the first time since they arrived, Ryan wasn't bored. He wasn't restless. He was fully present, a few rows ahead. The little girl who had been holding her father's hand earlier was still watching the guard with wide, shining eyes. Ryan watched her too. He saw how she was standing, not talking, not moving around, just quietly holding her flag and looking at the guard as if she knew. She was witnessing something special. She was so young, yet she understood something that Ryan, at 15, had missed at first. The guard stopped again, turned sharply, and continued his walk. His boots hit the stone with a sound that carried over the whole courtyard. Ryan found himself straightening his back a little without even thinking. He wasn't mocking anymore. He wasn't giggling. He was simply watching with a kind of quiet respect that he didn't even know he was capable of. When the ceremony slowly came to an end, the guard returned to his post. The air felt softer now, calmer. A few people whispered gentle words to their companions. Some wiped their eyes. Others simply stood still for a few more seconds before walking away. Ryan's parents began to move too, but Ryan stayed where he was for a brief moment. He didn't want to leave yet. His father noticed and slowed down. You okay, son? He asked gently. Ryan nodded again. Yeah, he said quietly. I didn't understand before, but now I do. His father placed a hand on his shoulder, not to correct him, but to let him know he was proud of the realization. It's okay to make mistakes, his father said softly. What matters is that you learn from them. This place isn't about scaring anyone. It's about remembering, respecting, and understanding. Ryan looked back at the tomb. He thought about the people who were buried there. People who would never have names known to the world, but were honored every single day by someone who stood guard for them. He thought about the guard himself, how serious and dedicated he was. And then he thought about his own behavior, how out of place it had been in such a meaningful moment. As they began to walk away, Ryan felt different inside. He wasn't laughing or cracking jokes like he usually did. He walked quietly, looking around at the other visitors. He saw the veteran with the cap again, the man who had looked at him with disappointed eyes earlier. This time, the man gave him a small, knowing nod. It wasn't a smile, but it wasn't cold either. It was a simple gesture that said, "You get it now." Ryan nodded back. It wasn't a conversation, but it was enough. Something unspoken passed between them, a quiet understanding. As they reached the steps leading away from the tomb, Ryan turned back one more time. He watched the guards standing tall and strong. He watched how the people entering the area slowed their steps, lowered their voices, and adjusted their posture. The guard didn't need to say much. His presence alone taught people how to behave. Ryan whispered to himself, "I won't ever act like that again." His mother heard him and placed her hand gently on his back. "That's good," she said softly. "This place is special. Now you know why." They walked slowly down the path, blending with other visitors. Ryan noticed how some people held hands, some walked alone with quiet expressions, and others took soft, respectful steps. No one rushed, no one shouted. It was as if the space itself carried an invisible message, guiding everyone's behavior. Ryan felt lighter and heavier at the same time. Lighter because he had learned something meaningful. Heavier because he knew he had made a mistake, but one that had taught him a lesson he would never forget. As they reached the end of the path, Ryan's father stopped and looked at him. "Do you want to say anything?" he asked gently. Ryan hesitated. Then, after a moment, he said quietly, "I just feel sorry, not because anyone told me to be, but because I understand now. This isn't a place for laughing. It's a place to respect people who gave everything." His father nodded. "That's all that matters, Ryan. Not everyone understands right away, but when they do, it stays with them forever." They continued walking toward the parking area, where cars were parked in neat rows. The world outside the memorial grounds felt noisier, brighter, and more casual. People talked louder. Cars honked. Music played from a passing vehicle. But Ryan carried the silence of that sacred space with him. It was a silence he wouldn't forget, when they got into the car. Ryan didn't pull out his phone like he usually did. He sat quietly for a moment, looking out of the window at the tall trees that surrounded the area. His friend looked at him curiously and asked, "What are you thinking?" Ryan thought for a second, then answered slowly, "I was just being dumb back there. I didn't realize how important it was. I won't do that again." "Not anywhere like that," his friend nodded. "Yeah, I kind of felt that too." As the car pulled out of the parking lot, Ryan looked back at the memorial one last time. The guard was still there, still standing with the same unwavering posture, as if he had been carved into that place forever. It amazed Ryan to think how much dedication it must take to do that every day. No matter who was watching, no matter what was happening, the drive continued, and Ryan leaned his head against the window. He thought about how a few words and a single look had changed how he felt. The guard hadn't needed to lecture him. The place itself had taught him. A lesson had settled quietly in his heart. Respect is not just about rules or signs that say be silent. It's about understanding the meaning behind the silence. It's about recognizing when something is bigger than you. Later that evening, after they returned to their hotel, Ryan sat on the bed scrolling through his phone.